Hey kids, what time is it?
Hey everybody, Keith here from GeekTime TV, and it looks like the selections from the Vault third episode on Kiss was really popular. So I'm going to play a hunch. I'm thinking maybe you want some more Kiss videos? I don't know. But I found this cool thing called Tier Maker, and I'm going to rank all the Kiss studio albums based on kick-ass to hot trash on this sliding scale. So you can see on the left, we have kick-ass, most excellent, mid, as the kids say, a letdown, or just hot trash. So just real quick before I start ranking these, this is my personal opinion. It has nothing to do with other people think of these albums, and would love to know if you agree or disagree with whatever I throw on this chart. Also, I've been a Kiss fan since I was 7 years old. 1976, got my first album, Rock and Roll Over. We'll see where that lands on this chart. And became a Kiss fan at that point in my life. And, along the way, I found other things, other bands. Kiss kind of went backseat. Sometimes I thought I was done with them, but then you circle back and you remember why they're so important as an artist in my life. And of course, I went to see them on this final tour, just to kind of say goodbye. So let's get into ranking these albums, and we'll go in order. I've assembled the thumbnails on the bottom here in chronological order, so we can just rank them by then. So the first one is their self-titled debut album from 1974, and I'm putting this in kick-ass because, number one, it does kick ass. And number two, if you look at the track listing, they're playing 5 of these songs live still when they tour. So, it's just right out of the gate with a bunch of timeless classics, a bunch of hits like Black Diamond, Strutter, Deuce, Cold Gin. There's a bunch of great songs on there. So you got to rank that one in the kick-ass category for sure. Later that year, 1974, they put out a second album, Hotter Than Hell. And, when I first heard this album back when I was, younger, I didn't really like it because the production, even though it's the same producer as the first album, the production wasn't as clean. It almost sounded like it was recorded in a garage using a really low-quality recording device. And it turns out, that's sort of the way it was done. It was kind of played live. They were trying to capture their live sound essence. And the songs on here are fantastic. And once I got over the low production quality and started paying more attention to the actual music, I realized how good of an album this is. Not only that, as I got even older, I realized that the low production value actually enhances this album. It's just so gritty and so raw. And it works with the type of songs on there like Strange Ways and Parasite. So the title track, Hotter Than Hell, this is a great album for sure. Even the pseudo ballad Going Blind, even though it's kind of, the lyrics are kind of creepy. There's just some great stuff on this album. So I'm putting the first 2 albums from 1974 in kick-ass category. Next up, 1975, Dressed to Kill. This album was actually produced by Casablanca Records owner and CEO, or executive in charge, Neil Bogart. So Neil Bogart signed Kiss as the first ever act to his label Casablanca, and at this point in time, the first 2 albums didn't sell a whole lot, and the album, the label was taking on water, and they were living off Neil Bogart and their manager Bill Aucoin's credit cards, and it was make or break time. And Neil Bogart said to Kiss, you know what you guys need is like an anthem, a hit single. You don't have that. You're not getting any radio play. We've got to turn this around with something. So on that album, the last track on the album became the song that Kiss is known for, Rock and Roll All Night and Party Every Day. The album itself had a glossier sound to it. So, it's a really good album. It's really well produced, but I'm putting that in the most excellent. I don't feel that it holds up with the first two. There's a couple songs right on side one that I'm not a big fan of. A lot of people love them. Room Service, Two Timer, Ladies in Waiting. To me, they're they're okay. It's everything that comes after that I really like. Songs like Lover All I Can and Getaway and Rock Bottom. Those are really good songs. And there's a song on there called She that's kind of weird because She doesn't fit with the glossier sound on here. You have Come On and Love Me, Rock and Roll Night. And then you have She, which is a lot slower tempo. It's grittier. It sounds more like it should be on Hotter Than Hell. And on the album Hotter Than Hell, there's a song called Mainline that's a little poppier, and that sounds like it belongs on Dressed to Kill. But either way, it's a good album. It's just, to me, it lost some of its punch. I don't know. It's kind of thin in production, and it's okay. It's a short album too. Like some of the songs are 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes. So I don't know. It just didn't hold up to the first two, in my opinion. So later that year, Kiss decided to record themselves in concert because despite the success or pseudo-success of the first three albums and the cult following they were developing, the albums didn't capture the essence of their live performances, so they released Kiss Alive, which is not here. These are just the studio albums, even though it's argued that is also a studio album. And Kiss Alive went platinum and launched their careers. It was a huge hit. And so they became internationally known almost overnight at that point. So in early 1976, we get their fourth studio album, Destroyer. Now, Destroyer is an interesting album. They went out and they hired Bob Ezrin to produce it, and Bob Ezrin wanted to bring in more of a bigger sound. They wanted Kiss to be, less bubblegum rock and roll and kind of give the impression, which, love them or hate them, look, they're not the greatest musicians, right? But Bob Ezrin wanted to give that idea that these were really polished musicians that, you got to get past the clown makeup and the high heels and the costumes and the explosions and all that stuff and actually hear the band instead of see the band. So Destroyer was kind of a pseudo concept album. He employed orchestrations in there. He had sound effects, very theatrical kind of album. And there's some great stuff on here. Detroit Rock City, which is my all-time favorite Kiss song, is on here. King of the Nighttime World, which I didn't realize back then, or until very recently actually, that it's a cover song. God of Thunder, which is basically Gene's anthem. Gene is the god of thunder, even though the song was written by Paul Stanley. Paul was going to sing the song. Bob Ezrin said, no. This is for Gene. And then you have, a couple of fillers like Flamin' Youth and Sweet Pain. Not horrible songs, but, nothing that stand out with those two. And then there's Do You Love Me? Shout It Out Loud, which is kind of the sequel to Rock and Roll Night, another foot-stomping sing-along song. But the real surprise, I guess you'd say, of the album was the ballad Beth, which was thrown on the Detroit Rock City 45 to give to radio stations as the B-side. And it ended up that the B-side got played probably to this day more than the A-side. I hate that song, though. I hate Beth. I can't stand it. But it put Kiss on the map. People who didn't like rock and roll liked the song Beth and knew the song Beth. So Destroyer, with that, I'll put Destroyer in most excellent. It was a controversial album because a lot of Kiss fans of the first three albums didn't like the new direction they took. It didn't really sell all that great, so that kind of scared them. So later that year in 1976, they went back into the studio again. Yeah, that's right. 5 albums in, 2.5, 3 years? 2 in 74, 2 in 75 when you count Alive, and 2 in 76. So Rock and Roll Over was the first album I ever got, and I got it when it had just come out. Quick story is that I sent my mom to the mall with my chores money, my allowance money, and I said, can you get me Kiss Alive? Because I had discovered Kiss a month or two earlier at my friend Tommy Monahan's house. Tommy Monahan, if you're watching and you know who I am, you'll remember this. So Kiss Alive, he was playing it when I went up there and we were trading baseball cards or something. And I was like, what is this? And he showed me the album cover and I was like, oh my God, I have to have this. I love the music that I was listening to. And then to see these comic book superheroes, you know, playing guitars on the cover with the fire. And I was like, I gotta have this. So I sent my mom to get it at the mall. She was going to the mall, and she called from a payphone, kids. Yeah, she called from the payphone. I was with the babysitter, and she told me that they didn't have Kiss Alive. It was sold out, but they had the new Kiss record. Did I want the new Kiss record? And I said, okay. Yeah, bring me home the new Kiss record. And it was Rock and Roll Over. Rock and Roll Over might be the best Kiss album ever recorded. I was blown away right out of the gate. The song I Want You, followed by Take Me. You've got Calling Dr. Love. Everybody knows that song. You've got, you know, shredders like Making Love on there. Baby Driver. There's some really good stuff on here. I'm giving Rock and Roll Over. Boom. Kick-ass. Kick-ass album. Still, it might be my favorite or my second favorite to this day. That's a long time listening to that thing. It is great. To me, the surprise track is Mr. Speed. That's an unsung top track. So if you get your hands on Rock and Roll Over, let me know what you think of Mr. Speed. So the following year, 1977, they put out this album, Love Gun. And Love Gun and Rock and Roll Over are kind of like sister albums because, you know, with Destroyer being so different, the band, I think, kind of panicked a little bit and wanted to get back to their roots and go back to raw rock and roll. So Eddie Kramer produced the next two, Rock and Roll Over and Love Gun. They almost are like the same album. And I'll never forget when I got Love Gun when it came out. And my grandmother at the time was in the hospital with a blood clot. So we went to visit her after I bought the album. I didn't get it. I was a kid. I was 8, 9 years old. Let's love the Love Gun. To me, I equated a Love Gun to Cupid's arrow. It was harmless to me, you know, innocent. I didn't realize it was Paul Stanley's penis. And so we went to visit my grandmother, and my mom says, oh, show her the record you bought, thinking that the cover would be enough to like, wow. And she saw the title, and she ripped into my mom. And I was like, what's the big deal? A Love Gun is like Cupid's arrow. Big deal. Yeah, well, I guess big deal. So anyway, Love Gun starts right out, punches you right in the face with I Stole Your Love. Awesome Paul Stanley tune. Then you've got stuff like Got Love for Sale. The classic Christine 16, though very dated. Very inappropriate. Very creepy. But it's still a decent song. And then you have stuff like the title track, Love Gun itself. Then there's great Gene stuff like Almost Human and the song Plaster Caster, which was dedicated to a groupie at the time. So I'm putting Love Gun in most excellent. Not as good as Rock and Roll Over or the first two albums, but it's very, very good. So that brings us to a point in history, as they like to say, where the band was starting to fracture. All their success had become way too much. Ace and Peter in particular had started to develop alcohol and chemical dependencies. They were unhappy. They wanted to go their own way. So Paul and Gene said, I got a great idea. Let's make more history. Let's be the first band to take a break from each other, go off and do our own solo projects, you know, and then we'll come back. So, you know, I thought I put these in alphabetical order. Let me just quickly do that. I wanted to put them in alphabetical order. Come on. All right, you do this, Jimmy. I want them. There we go. We're going to put Ace right there. All right, now they're in alphabetical order. So let's rank Peter Criss's album first. Peter Criss's solo album was not the first one I got. First one I got was Ace Frehley's. Second one I got was Gene Simmons. Then I got Peter Criss. And holy moly. And I remember I got it as an Easter gift. And, the extended family had come to our house for Easter. I went in to listen to my Peter Criss album, thinking the drummer from Kiss is going to just tear it up. And it's a Barry Manilow album. And my uncle, still to this day, laughs. He's just like, I'll never forget you coming out of your bedroom sobbing. And he said, what's the matter? And I said, oh, it's my Peter Criss album. And he said, is it skipping? Is it scratched? And I said, no, it's awful. Now, that said, it was awful and very disappointing. Over the years, I don't hate the songs on there. There's a couple that are okay. I don't mind Hooked on Rock and Roll. I Can't Stop the Rain is actually a beautiful song. That's a really good song. There's a few on there, but and I get what he was trying to do. Peter's more of a jazz guy. He wanted to go in a completely different direction, but when, you got the drummer from Kiss, you're thinking it's going to blow me away. So I've softened on it a little bit, but it's certainly nothing I'm going to pull out and listen to, probably ever. I mean, sometimes when it pops up on shuffle, I'm like, what? I skip it. Even if it's a song that I don't mind, it's just not for me. But I'm not going to put it in hot trash. I'm going to put it in letdown. Because I was literally let down. I expected more. Now we get to Ace. Ace was the first solo album I got. And it was only because I went to buy Jeans, and Jeans was gone. It was sold out. So I bought Aces. Back then, when I was a kid, we're still talking 1978. I was 9 years old. So you math whizzes out there can figure out my age. My favorite Kiss band members were Gene was first because he was by far the coolest with the spitting blood and the whole demon horror movie thing. Ace was number 2 because kick-ass space guy, cool costume, flaming guitar, the whole bit. Peter was number 3 because he's a badass. He's a drummer, very cool guy. Paul was my least favorite, even though he sang the best songs, because Paul was just too light in the loafers for me at the time. That all changed in the years that followed, but I had no real plans to buy Paul Stanley's solo album. It was last on the list, and I never ended up getting it when I was not 8 years old, 9 years old at the time, because other things had come out like Kiss Alive 2 and the double platinum best of, so I kind of used my money on that. I digress. Let's grade out Ace's album. So Ace's album, put it on, bam, rip it out right, awesome. Speeding Back to My Baby, like this thing, New York Groove, which, yeah, it's a cover song, but it became Ace's anthem. My God, there's just so many great songs on here. Ozone, Snowblind, What's on Your Mind, and it was like a Kiss album missing the other guys. Blown away. Ace's album is going in the kick-ass department because Ace's album is the one solo album that I could pull out and listen to at any time and just rock out. It's just so good. Which brings us to Gene. Gene's was really disappointing. I got Gene's, as I said, second. I got it after Ace's. So Ace, to me, was the benchmark. I put Ace's on. I'm like, oh my God, this is great. You expect all of them to be at that level, and they just weren't. So Gene's was weird. Gene's album is kind of like, God, I don't even know how to put it. It's like, it's just, Dennis Eckersley once called the Pittsburgh Pirates a hodgepodge of nothingness, and that's kind of what Gene's album is. It's a hodgepodge of nothingness. It starts out with Radioactive. Okay, very cool, good song. Then you get some weirdo things, Living in Sin and Tunnel of Love. There's just some, he was dating Cher at the time, and I don't know what was going through his head. But then half the album is very Beatley. Some of the songs sound like Beatles songs, which are amazing. Mr. Make Believe, Man of a Thousand Faces, See You Tonight. I mean, these are great songs. Then he did a cover of See You in Your Dreams, which came off Rock and Roll Over. So like a year and a half later, he's covering a Kiss song, badly, I might add, and then he ends the album with "When You Wish Upon a Star," yes, from Disney, which is beyond cringe. I mean, I know why it's on there. It's on there because him and his family immigrated from Israel. He couldn't speak a word of English. He came to the land of dreams and became the biggest rock star on the planet. So I get why it's there. Doesn't mean I have to like it. So, Jeans I'm going to put in mid. Because while it was a bit of a letdown, there's enough good stuff on there. It's like half the album's good and half the album's just bizarre, weird to bad. So I'll put Gene in mid. Now we get to Paul's. Now, Paul's album, I got later. I was probably 13, 14, when I finally got around to buying Paul's album. Bought it on cassette, because now we're into the 80s, and the transition from LP records to cassettes, because cassettes were portable. I could take them with me wherever I went. I could listen to them in people's cars. I could listen to it on a radio somewhere. Go to the beach, what have you. Much more versatile. And they didn't scratch and skip. Yeah, the tape would get jammed and rip and tear and get eaten and stuff like that. But anybody remember when your tape got eaten? And if it didn't rip, you'd have to fish it out of the tape player, and the tape would all be hanging out. And then you could take a pencil and put it into the sprockets and just wind it right back in. And if it got a little crinkled, when it would play, you'd hear a crinkly noise, almost like static on a record. But you kids don't know how good you got it now, how easy things are. Anyway, Paul Stanley solo album, it's pretty good. It's not Aces and it's not Jeans. It's somewhere in between. There's a lot of great stuff on there, except for the really sappy, drippy ballad "Hold Me, Touch Me." It's just awful. But everything else is okay. I think it's songs like "Goodbye," "It's All Right," "Love and Chains." It's okay. So I'm gonna put his in mid as well. It's just one of those things too where I don't really like the production of the album. So when I do have a song from there come up on shuffle, I kind of skip it, unless I'm in really, I really want to listen to it. It's just, but Bruce Kulick, who joined Kiss in the 80s, Bruce Kulick's brother Bob plays on it. And Bob's a great guitarist. He's also on the side 4 of Kiss Alive 2, which I guess could have been included in this because it's kind of an EP. For those of you who don't know, Kiss Alive 2, when it came out in 1978, had 3 sides that played only songs from the Destroyer, Rock and Roll Over, Love Gun era. When they played out live, they of course played songs off the first 3 albums, but they didn't want to duplicate songs from Kiss Alive on Kiss Alive 2. So a lot of the songs on Kiss Alive 2 are like sound checks, like Tomorrow and Tonight, and a bunch of those they didn't play live at all, but they recorded them during a sound check, put some crowd noise behind it. Now it's live. And then side 4 had 5 new songs on it that Bob Kulick played on, except for the one Ace track, Rocket Ride. And that side 4 has some amazing stuff on it. So if I was to rank side 4, it would land in most excellent. Most excellent. Because the 4 original Kiss songs are pretty good. Rockin' in the USA is the only kind of goofy, cheesy. It's fine. It's another one of these rock and roll all night, shout it out loud, Tomorrow and Tonight, stomp your feet and sing with us songs. And then they did a cover of Any Way You Want It, and you take it or leave it. So after the solo album projects, after Kiss Alive 2, and then they put out a double platinum album with all their top songs on it, all remastered, some were rejiggered. Stupidly, like the intro to Rock Bottom ended up on She, whatever. And there's a disco version of Strutter 78, which is fine. They came back with Dynasty, and now, 1979, the disco era is in full swing. Club 54 is the place, right? So Kiss decides to I think they're kind of chasing a trend. They released this album that's soft rock, pop rock. I guess you'd call it. Doesn't sound anything like the first 6. It's, it spawned one of their biggest hits ever, I Was Made for Loving You, which many, non-Kiss fans tend to love. I think the better of that type of song, there's another one called Sure Know Something. It's the better of the two, in my opinion. Ace does 3 songs on it, which is interesting. I think he got a lot of confidence from his the success of his 1978 solo album. So he does 3 songs. One was a Rolling Stones cover, 2000 Man, which is awesome. Hard Times is a great song that he does. Gene only has 2 songs on the album, and they're probably the weakest of all the tunes on there. And Peter does one called Dirty Livin', which is very disco-y. A big sonic boom disco song. Anyway, so Dynasty, I was let down. I still to this day am not a fan of this album, and I know a lot of people love it. I just don't. To me, it was Kiss going in the wrong direction. It didn't sound right. And shortly after it came out, I learned that Peter was leaving the band, and I blew a gasket, and I was done. Done with Kiss. I was so pissed off. I saw Eric Carr on the cover of People magazine, and that was it. So years later, when I got back into the band, I backtracked, and I got the next album that came out in 1980 called Unmasked. And I remember when I was not into them because of Peter leaving, and Dynasty, in my opinion, is not being very good. I saw the next album in the store, Unmasked, and the cover with the comic book cover of them like revealing their true identity, which I should mention again. We did it ad nauseum on those Kiss Vault episodes, but up to this point, the general public had no idea what these guys looked like. So, we're going up on 6-7 years now. Nobody knows what they look like. Every time they were in public, they had their faces covered, handkerchiefs, and, covered it with their hands, whatever they had to do to not be photographed with their makeup off. So it kind of had that whole Clark Kent Superman thing going on. These guys were kind of like comic book heroes for real. You didn't know who they really were. They could be standing next to you at the mall. Who knows, right? So when I finally did get around to listening to Unmasked, I was really stunned at how awful it is. It's Dynasty light. If you could get any lighter than Dynasty, they figured out a way. This is a pure disco album. There's a few standouts on there, like Naked City from Gene is a good one. But wow, I mean, there's some real pootsers on this album, like Torpedo Girl is such a stupid song. Ace again has 3 songs. It's just, it's going in the hot trash bin for me. It's not good at all, and it's not Kiss. So that's all I'm going to say about that album. Let's move on. Now, I got back into Kiss in 1984, so these albums I had to get retroactively. And I had seen Music from the Elder in the store, and I remember seeing the hand with the door knocker, and I'm like, what in the world is this all about? And, kept walking because I wanted Iron Maiden instead, right? Or Van Halen. So, when I finally got around to getting The Elder is another divisive album. Much like Destroyer, only on steroids. So Bob Ezrin, who produced Destroyer, comes back, and they use a concept, I guess, that Gene came up with about some kind of medieval, wizard kind of thing, boy becoming a man, the hero's journey thing. They decided to record a soundtrack to it, to a movie or a graphic novel or whatever it is that never came out. So it's a really conceptual album, and it's really, really good. A lot of people hate it. I think it's really, aside from Odyssey, which is terrible, the rest of the songs on here are just amazing. Under the Rose is a phenomenal song. There's even the instrumental Escape from the Island. I really like it, and I like what they tried to do. The timing of it was wrong. Who knows if it would ever be right with a band like this, but I'm putting The Elder in most excellent. I think it's really, really good. So, 1982, the band's on life support because the previous 3 albums really didn't sell. Well, Dynasty sold well, but Unmasked and The Elder were just not working. So they decided to go back to their roots, to go back to the basics, and record Creatures of the Night with a producer named Michael James Jackson, who ended up doing the next album as well. But Creatures of the Night is, to me, it's between Rock and Roll Over and Creatures of the Night for best Kiss album ever. You've got, I'm putting this in Kick-Ass, you've got songs like Rock and Roll Hell, Creatures of the Night, Saint and Sinner, I Love It Loud. There's just so many great songs in here. War Machine, Killer. Gene, this is a Gene album through and through, and I think what's great about it too is the drums are just, they're bombastic, and that's what makes the album great. If the drums were recorded like any other album, it wouldn't work. But the reverb and it sounds like they recorded the drums in an airplane hangar, an empty airplane hangar. They are cannon shots, and it's just awesome. It's such a big, audacious, raw album, and it's just hit after hit after hit. There's not one bad song on that album. Could have done without the ballad "I Still Love You," but it's a great song. So, kick ass it goes. Next up, Lick It Up, 1983. So Creatures didn't sell either after the 2 bombs right before it. The tour for Creatures went bankrupt. Nobody bought tickets. So it was fight or flight, as they say. And Paul and Gene decide maybe it's time to wash the faces after 10 years. Let's take the makeup off and show everybody what we look like. Now, the album was already recorded, and the album was recorded to be a makeup album, and it sounds where Rock and Roll Over and Love Gun were like sister albums, Creatures and Lick It Up are like sister albums. Same producer, Michael James Jackson on these 2, Eddie Kramer on the other 2. Lick It Up is awesome, and it's official that Vinnie Vincent is in Kiss now. Ace left before Creatures, even though Ace is on the cover of Creatures and he played in the music video. He was out, and Vinnie Vincent did a lot of the work on Creatures. Vinnie comes back for Lick It Up, which, ironically, the only, in my opinion, bad song on Lick It Up is the title track, Lick It Up. Everything else on there, like right out of the gate, Exciter, great song. 1,000,000 to 1 is one of Paul Stanley's all-time greats. You've got Fits Like a Glove on there. You got All Hell's Breaking Loose, kind of a rap rock song. Great stuff. I'm putting Lick It Up. Geez, I don't know. It's between Kick-Ass and Most Excellent. Oh, I'm going to put it in Most Excellent. I like it a little bit less than Creatures, so I can't put it right there with Creatures. So, great stuff, though. If you haven't checked out those 2 albums, check them out. So then, 1984, this is when I rediscovered Kiss after, 5 years away. And it happened because I saw the Heavens on Fire music video on MTV and went, oh, hey, look at that. That sounds like old Kiss. Okay. Now, Animalize is weird. Much like Gene's solo album, which was a hodgepodge of nothingness, this album is like 2 different albums. The Paul Stanley stuff is completely different from the Gene Simmons stuff. And that's because Paul was holding Kiss together and fully invested in Kiss. Gene was too worried about his movie career and kind of was mailing it in. So the Gene stuff on here is kind of weak. It's not awful. It's just, it sounds like filler that was cut from one of the previous 2 albums or both of the previous 2 albums. Well, the Paul stuff is really good. The problem with this album is it doesn't sound much like Kiss. It sounds like somebody else. It sounds like whatever was hot at the time, because they brought a guitarist in named Mark St. John, who was a shredder. And not only was he a shredder, but he couldn't remember his stuff, his licks from minute to minute. So it was always, he was playing something new every time he laid down a track. So he's just a speed guitarist, and that's not what Kiss does. So everything got, faster and a lot more of the shredding, and it's a decent album, but it's not Kiss. I don't hate it, but I don't love it either. So I'm gonna put it in mid. It's okay. The Paul stuff's good. I like Under the Gun. I've had enough. But other than that, it's all right. So a year later, and now I'm gonna get fully back invested in Kiss. I'm all excited. I'm gonna go to the tour because they have a new album out called Asylum, 1985. Here I am right smack in the middle of my high school years, and out comes Asylum. It's okay. Another mixed bag. I liked it a lot more when it first came out. I thought it was kind of peak Kiss, but over the years it's kind of it's fallen off. It did spawn a couple of big hits that were on MTV. Tears Are Falling and Who Wants to Be Lonely. They also had a music video for the utterly ridiculous All Night. I don't hate the song All Night. It's just goofy stupid. I like the melody and everything. It's just the lyrics are really dumb. Gene had some good stuff on here though. Love's a Deadly Weapon, Trial by Fire. These songs are decent for Gene, who at the time again wasn't all there. So Asylum, I'm gonna also put in mid. It's fine. It's it's Secretly Cruel. That's another good song on there. But it's an album that you can listen to all the way through, but are you going to pull it out specifically to listen to? Probably not. But if it comes on, you won't shut it off either. So there we are. So now, 1987, Crazy Nights hits. And this this album cost me my Kiss fandom again. Albeit brief, I heard this album and I was like, what the frig is this crap? This was right up there with Unmasked for me. There's keyboards, there's Paul Stanley's voice is in such the falsetto, the high octave range. It's maddening, especially on a song like My Way, which is just awful. Even the good songs on here at the time, the ones you could kind of tolerate, I can't stomach anymore. Like Reason to Live, this is bad. Believe it or not, the only song I like on here now is No, 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 a Gene song, and Bruce Kulick does some great stuff on that. But this album is hot garbage, man. It is hot trash. Oops, it goes right there. And I don't care if I ever hear this again. And they started playing the song "Crazy Crazy Nights" on tour on the farewell, the End of the Road tour. And man, it was an encore, and they start playing that, and it was like it sucked the air out of the room. Nobody likes that stuff. Nobody likes anything from Crazy Nights. It's just bad. So I even skipped the tour that year. I showed them. So the next 1989 comes Hot in the Shade, which again at the time I liked probably because it was less poppy. There were no keyboards. It didn't sound like a Heart album like the previous entry. Crazy Nights sounded more like a Heart album to me. So this was back to basics. I didn't realize at the time how basic. These are like demos. My ear wasn't as fine-tuned, and I was 20 years old than it is now, and oh my gosh, this is a really bad album. It's got a few standouts, like The Ballad Forever became a huge hit for them, and probably the only thing that saved this album, and saved them probably from going down in flames again. But yeah, there's some awful stuff on here. Rise to It, the first song off the album, is okay. Eric Carr has a song called Little Caesar. That one's okay. Hide Your Heart was also a single. Fine. But the rest of the album is just bad. When you think of some of the Gene stuff, like Love's a Slap in the Face, Cadillac Dreams. Oh, so I'm putting this one in hot trash. Hot in the Shade is hot trash. And that's 2 hot trashes, in my opinion, back to back. And I would have been completely checked out if it wasn't for the tour. So at the time, the 2 guys who did those Vault episodes with me, George and Mike, and another fellow, Mark, the 4 of us were like, we'd dress up as Kiss for, we were uber Kiss fans, and our friendships were formed around Kiss. We were peak Kiss fandom as these 4 guys, and we went to the tour. We saw several shows on this tour, and the set list and the tour itself was spectacular. It was the antithesis of the studio album, and that's probably what saved me from cashing it in again. My friendship with those 3 guys and this tour, and the fact we got to meet them too that year backstage, which was really cool. So that's not what this is about. This is about ranking the albums. So it took a few years, and then in 1992, I remember my friend Jim Donahue runs down the hill, and he lived up the hill from me, and he hands me a VHS tape. He's like, "Have you seen this yet?" And I said, "What is it?" "The new Kiss song, Unholy." And I said, "No." I put it in. Oh my God. That's the best Gene song I've heard in 15 years. Holy crap. So, Revenge came out in 1992, and when Revenge came out, I loved it. I was like, this is what we've been waiting for. This was the first thing since Lick It Up that really got me excited. I can't say the same about it now. In fact, I don't like it all that much now. But in 1992, it was exactly what Kiss needed. You had I Just Wanna, which became another big hit off the album. Domino, which was an interesting deviation for Gene. I liked it. But then you have some stuff like Take It Off, which is just awful. I don't know. And I do like Car Jam at the end, which is, Eric Carr, Bruce Kulick brought that back because Eric had passed away during the recording of this album, or before the recording of this album. So they did a little tribute to him. I mean, Bob Ezrin produced it, but he didn't Bob Ezrin it out like Destroyer or Elder. I'm going to throw it in mid. It's not awful, but it's not as legendary as I think a lot of people feel about it. It's a mixed bag. What works, and what doesn't. So, next up, got Carnival of Souls. The Carnival of Souls is an album they were recording when they did the acoustic Unplugged, and they brought Ace and Peter out on that. And there were Kiss conventions going on, and where your appearances of the original 2 guys were happening, and everybody started talking reunion, and that's exactly what happened. And they picked up a new manager, Doc McGee, and Doc went full bore ahead with the reunion. And this album they'd been recording with Bruce Kulick and Eric Singer, who joined the band during Revenge, got put on the shelf. And it was only bootlegs that fans had. I had one that were being passed around that got Polygram Records at the time, Mercury Polygram, to put this out. So it's not complete. It's another one of these, they're glorified demos, like Hot in the Shade. And it's one of these albums that divides Kiss fans again, because it's grunge. It's a grunge album, and of course, it's a grunge album that came out 2 years after grunge was kind of over. But that said, it's a new direction for Kiss. It's them chasing a trend that they thought was, probably at the time going to last a little longer. And then it sat around for a while. So by the time it came out, it was kind of, yesterday's newspaper. That said, I like it. I like it a lot. It's got a lot of great stuff on it. Yeah, it's darker. It's oppressive. Bruce Kulick doesn't do any 80s style guitar work on it, so there's not all these blazing solos or anything. But I think it's a pretty good complement of songs, top to bottom. I don't hate it at all. I'm going to put it in mid. only because, you know, it's not polished and it's not something I would grab to listen to, you know, at the gym or anything. It's much like the other ones in mid. If it comes on, great. If it's on shuffle and it pops up, I'll listen. But I'm not going to pull it out and specifically listen to it front to back. So the reunion goes in full swing, and then in 1998 they release an album that they say features Ace and Peter again. We learn later on that, you know, those guys barely played on it at all. Ace played on his song, Peter played on his, and there were studio musicians filling in the rest of the time. Psycho Circus, even when it came out in 1998, once you get past like the first two songs, you realize this is not good at all. It sounded like a bunch of cuts. It sounded like stuff that was laying on the floor that was cut from previous albums that they just recorded and threw on it on this thing just to get it out with Ace and Peter's face on it. I think it's a letdown. It's not hot trash because it does have some good stuff on it, but overall it's a weak effort and really not good. So now we're down to the last two here. And it took a lot of time between 1998 and 2009 when Sonic Boom got released. And this time now Tommy Thayer and Eric Singer are back. And they put out their first studio album as a band together. And I remember walking by this thing. And again, I'd kind of given up on Kiss after they did the farewell tour with the original four. And then I saw them pop up on TV with Eric Singer and Tommy Thayer wearing Ace and Peter's makeup, and I was like, oh my god, this is wow. I wanted no part of it. So I see this album and I kind of read the track list and went, oh god, whatever, and I'd given up on them again. And but then I circled back and picked it up eventually and gave it a listen. And the first song, Modern Day Delilah, is awesome. It's like classic Kiss. And then, you know, Tommy Thayer's song on there is good. Is it Lightning Strikes? Or it's Out of This World. I don't remember which one's on which, Monster or Sonic Boom. But there's really not a lot other than that. Like, a couple of the songs sound the same, like Stand and Say Yeah, and they're all kind of generic. I'm putting this one in letdown. I won't put it as hot trash, but it's on the fence. It's not good. You know, I think there's 12 songs on it. Maybe 10. I don't know. But there's only like 2 or 3 that are worth a listen. The rest of it's just And then in 2012, out comes Monster. And I picked it up expecting it to be Sonic Boom 2. I was jaded, but, you know, I'm also a completist, and I'm like, you know what? I have to get it. I have all the other ones. I'll get it. And I'll never forget when I first listened to it. I was driving my then I guess she was an infant, right? 2012. No, yeah, she was an infant, driving her around in the car. It wasn't bad. It's like, okay. Hell or Hallelujah comes right out of the gate, much like Modern Day Delilah. I'm like, okay. And I really enjoyed some of the Gene stuff on this album. Wall of Sound and stuff like that. So, yeah, back to the Stone Age. I don't like Eric Singer's song, Eat Your Heart Out. That's not a good song. Tommy's song is good again. Paul's got some great stuff on there. Last Chance and stuff like that. So, Freak, I don't mind Freak. To me, it was an upgrade from Sonic Boom. I loved it more back then. You know, as I've listened to it more, it's kind of gone down. I'm going to put it in mid. It probably would have been in most excellent a decade ago, but now I'm going to put it in mid. So, anyway, so there's my ranking. So, just to recap, and let me blow this up for the recap here. Boom, boom, boom. So, to recap, in Kick-Ass, I have the first self-titled album, Hotter Than Hell, Rock and Roll Over, Ace Frehley, 1978, and Creatures of the Night. To me, those 5 Kiss albums are home runs. You cannot go wrong. Next bracket, Dress to Kill, Destroyer, Love Gun, Music from the Elder, and Lick It Up. So if you're going to give Kiss a try, if you're not a Kiss fan and you want to listen to some Kiss and see what it's all about, these 10 albums I strongly recommend. You probably won't be disappointed. You might be disappointed in the Elder. That's just a personal thing with me. Yeah, you never know. And then mid, we've got Gene's 1978, Paul's 1978, Animalize, Asylum, Revenge, Carnival of Souls, and Monster. These are, they're fine. They're not going to blow you away, but they're not awful. Letdowns, Peter Criss, 1978, Dynasty, Psycho Circus, and Sonic Boom. And Hot Trash, Don't Bother, unless you're like me, you're a completist and you have to have all the Kiss albums. Unmasked, Crazy Nights, and Hot in the Shade are garbaggio. So that's it. That's my ranking of the Kiss studio albums. Thanks for hanging with me on this. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. We're getting close to 1,500 now, so we just need a few more of you to just click the little button. It's non-invasive. It doesn't hurt at all. Promise. And thank you to those of you who have subscribed. Please leave a comment below. Let me know what you think if you're ranking your Kiss albums. And, of course, smash that like button if so inclined. That's it for me. I got to get back to doing my household chores. I'll see you on the next video.
Thanks for watching GeekTime TV. If you like this video, please subscribe to the channel. If you subscribe, make sure to check the little bell icon anytime someone from our network drops new content here. Want some GeekTime swag? Check out the merchandise available in the GeekTime TV store, linked in the channel description below. Share GeekTime TV with friends, and as always, thank you for your support. We'll see you soon.